not work.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And, of course, a very personal story. Both Bernie and I were told we couldn't have children. And I wanted children very much. And then one week, I didn't get a period when I expected it. And I called the doctor. He said, I wouldn't check you out unless you were dying of pain. So I waited about 15 minutes, and I called back and said, I'm dying of pain. He said, all right, come down. And he told me that I was pregnant. And I went and cashed a couple of dollar bills and got all the nickels I could, and I called everybody I knew in the world to tell them that I was pregnant. So much for keeping it a secret.
It's a nice story. And tell us how you met Uncle Bernie.
Well, I knew him. He went to Carnegie Mellon. He was 2 years ahead of me. But I was dating boys from Pitt and fraternity. Guy Lambs. He was a Taudelt. And I just knew who he was. And one of my friends from Monaca, who I still keep in touch with, said, you know, I have a cousin, and I have a feeling that you two would get along with each other. Is it all right if I tell him to call you? And I said, yeah, I'm willing. But it took a while, maybe 3 years or so.
3 years?
2 or 3 years.
I guess he was busy. Who was the cousin who connected you?
Who was?
His cousin who made the shidduch?
Zelda Grossman. She lived in
Monaca, you said.
I think Monaca.
So 3 years later he contacted you, and what happened?
Oh, we dated. And finally there were several other people. The war ended finally, and a lot of the boys came back, and I was having a great time. It was different in those days. For example, I could have a date with one person on Friday, another boy on Saturday, and somebody else Sunday afternoon, and you know, you didn't just get a person and stay with them. It just wasn't done that way. Until we finally realized that we should be single with each other. But it took a while, because it was a very exciting time. There was a club called Club 18. You had to be 18 years old to be a member of it. And it was a way of people coming back from the war to get to meet other people. So the girls met, boys came into the mills, into Ambridge from New York, and people got to know other people. And it was it was an exciting time, except so many of the ones we wanted to have back weren't back.
Yeah.
But we were lucky, Bernie and I. We shared a lot.
Yeah.
It was good.
Tell us about your wedding. Do you remember it well?
Oh, yeah. You know the story?
No.
Oh, well, I wanted a quiet wedding. I didn't have to entertain the world. The family should be there, but I didn't want to have a great big dinner. We're all from the same place. You could drive back to Alquippa and have dinner. But so there were just like 12 of us. The family, the immediate families had dinner at Webster Hall. About 10 years later, someone told me that my father took everybody out for dinner without my knowing it. That was a little secret. Rabbi Shapiro, the one who was, I say, a friend of the families from Polizetti, married us. And it was very hard to find a place to live because of all the people coming back from service. And they were building the apartments on Fifth Avenue, but there weren't many of them available yet. And while I was working, I found an apartment. And I was so excited. It was wonderful. Finally, we could have our own place. Where we lived was in somebody's second floor, one room, a kitchen, and we shared the bath. And we had to use pool to get that.
Hmm.
You had to know somebody who knew somebody.
Where was that?
That was in Squirrel Hill.
You remember what street? That's asking a lot to remember. But you got married at Webster Hall, just a few blocks from where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
You're here in Oakland, near where you went to school at Carnegie Tech, near where you
That's
got
right.
married.
It's all here in walking area.
Near where you lived after you got married, not far from. And then you had the home on Beechwood for many years. I remember that
yes.
house. That's a beautiful house.
Yes.
Beautiful house.
Uh-huh.
That's where you raised the 3 children, right? Mostly?
Well, Joni was born while we were still in the apartment that we were able to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up in the middle of the night and called the doctor. And he said, get to the hospital as fast as you can.
Mm.
And I said, how could you tell afterwards? How could you tell that I needed to go? He said, years of experience, I could tell from your voice that you... And there's nothing to it, you know. But we moved to a house on Bartlett Street,
Mm-hmm.
where Mark was born, and Kenny. But there were lots of steps, and I used to pull that great big heavy carriage up 20 steps and down, you know.
Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh has a lot of hills.
Lots of hills.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you don't necessarily realize the streets are hills. I didn't know that Bartlett was a steep hill until I was walking. Joni was walking, and Mark was in the stroller. And Joni said, "I'm tired, Mommy." So I picked her up, and she fell asleep, and I had to carry her and pull it.
Then you knew it was
It's a hill.
Uh-huh.
It was a hill.
That's funny. And then you moved to Beechwood after Bartlett.
What was that?
And then you moved to Beechwood?
And then went from there. Well, because of lots of steps. And for Bernie's mother and my father, it was just too difficult.
Yeah, I remember Bernie's mother. She was a nice lady.
Yeah.
And good cook, too, right?
Oh, yes.
Now, where was she from? What country?
I think she was a Litvak.
Uh-huh.
And her husband was from Russia.
Uh-huh. But she came over before the war, right?
She was here.
Well, her husband was where?
From Russia.
Russia. Uh-huh. Yeah, I remember she had a strong accent.
Yep. Yeah.
And she was...
But she was a wonderful guy. And, you know, in retrospect, here's this little lady.
Yeah.
And she must have been in her 70s. After her husband died, she ran a fish market down the hill.
Really?
And it took 2 streetcars to get there, 2 streetcars to come back.
In the Hill District? In the Hill District she
In the
ran?
Hill District, that's right. And when they had the riots, they did not tear down her place. She treated them very well, and they knew it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that.
Are you talking the late 60s?
That's right.
Yeah. That's
Martin
interesting.
Luther King riots.
What was her name?
Her name was Emma.
Emma. What did your children call her? Was it... There was a grandmothery nickname that I...
Grandma Winer.
Grandma Winer. Okay. Yeah.